Afternoon of January 29th, 2025, American Airlines 42, a Bombardier CRJ700, operated by PSA, took off from Wichita, Kansas, bound for Reagan National. Aboard the flight are 60 passengers, 2 pilots, and 2 flight attendants. A few hours later, Pat 25, a UH-60 attached to Bravo Company 12th Aviation Battalion, launched out of Davison Army Airfield at Fort Belvoir, Virginia, which is approximately 15 miles away from Washington, D.C. Aboard the Blackhawk are 2 pilots and a crew chief. One of the pilots is an experienced instructor with over 1,000 flight hours, and the other pilot, with 500 flight hours, is undergoing a check ride. The weather on the evening of January 29th was good. No clouds, visibility unrestricted. Pat 25 is challenging because of the density of traffic and the overlapping restricted areas along the route, and generally only experienced crews are allowed to use them. So he asks Pat 25, do you have the CRJ in sight? And then gives them instructions to pass behind Flight 5342, which would be a deviation to the east. Pat 25 replies, aircraft in sight, and then says, requesting separation, which is sort of confusing because the tower has already told them to pass behind the airliner. Several camera views captured what happened next. Here's the view from the Kennedy Center, which is upriver from DCA. You can see the Lincoln Memorial and the 14th Street Bridge below, and another aircraft that just took off right before the collision happens. Here's a zoomed-in version of that same view. Here's a view from somebody who is driving onto Joint Base Bowling, which is across the river due east of DCA. And here's footage captured by a bystander at the airport. The midair killed 64 people aboard the CRJ and 3 soldiers in the Blackhawk.
Under American Airlines and identified as Flight AA5342, collided midair with a military Blackhawk helicopter at approximately 9 p.m. on Wednesday, January 29, 2025. The tragic incident occurred as the plane was making its final approach toward Reagan Washington National Airport in Arlington, Virginia. American Airlines confirmed that 64 people were aboard the jet, 60 passengers and 4 crew members, while 3 soldiers were aboard the military helicopter. This plane's radio transponder stopped transmitting about 2,400 feet, which is around 730 meters short of the runway, roughly over the middle of the river. This has marked the first major U.S. commercial crash in more than 15 years. From an aerial perspective, it is evident that Flight AA5342 was approaching the airport from the south, descending over the scenic Potomac River. This area is known for its proximity to several iconic landmarks, such as the Pentagon, located nearby in Pentagon City. To the north, one can spot the striking dome of the United States Capitol building, a symbol of American democracy. The Potomac River, which encircles the airport and much of Arlington, serves as a natural boundary and offers breathtaking views for arriving flights. However, this area is also densely trafficked, both by air and on the ground, adding to the complexity of air traffic management in the region. American Airlines Flight 5342, which we'll refer to as the landing flight, was on its final approach to runway 33. At this stage, called short final, the aircraft was mere moments from landing, flying at an altitude of about 400 feet. This is the most critical phase of landing, where every second counts and pilots are laser-focused on safely bringing the plane down. At the same time, an Army Blackhawk helicopter, identified as Pat 25, was reportedly on a possible training flight. It was flying perpendicular to the flight path of Flight 5342, following the course of the Potomac River. The Potomac River is a designated flight corridor for helicopters, and it's common to see aircraft like this operating in the area. The key difference between the 2 aircraft in this scenario was their operating rules. The Blackhawk helicopter, Pat 25, was flying under visual flight rules. This means it was required to rely on visual observation of its surroundings to avoid other aircraft. The landing Flight 5342 was operating under instrument flight rules, which give it priority over VFR flights in controlled airspace. This system assumes that VFR aircraft will actively maintain visual separation to avoid conflicts. Moments before the collision, the air traffic control tower at Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport called Pat 25 to confirm whether they had the other aircraft in sight. Pat 25 responded that they did. At first glance, this seems like an acknowledgement that they were aware of Flight 5342's presence and were taking steps to avoid it. However, it now seems likely that Pat 25 had mistakenly identified a different aircraft, possibly a departing flight from the same airport, and believed that was the other aircraft referred to by the tower. Tragically, PAT-25 may not have realized that Flight 5342 was descending directly into its path. This misidentification could have led to the Blackhawk failing to adjust its course in time to avoid a collision. Although I'm not a pilot, this is what appears to have happened based on the available information. It's a heartbreaking incident that raises questions about how such misunderstandings can occur and what safety measures can prevent them in the future. If you have more insight or expertise, please feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. The passenger plane broke into multiple pieces and sank several feet into the river. Meanwhile, the helicopter ended up landing upside down on the water. Regarding the rescue mission, the main challenge is access. The water they're working in is about 8 feet deep, which is roughly 2.5 meters. On top of that, the conditions are tough. There's strong wind, chunks of ice floating around, which obstructs rescue workers. We also have audio from air traffic control that has been published online, capturing the moments as the two aircraft approach each other. In the recording, we can hear a conversation.
CRJ in flight.
It appears to involve the air traffic controller, with P standing for priority air transport, the helicopter, and CRJ referring to the passenger plane.
CRJ.
The response seems to come from the helicopter, but something goes terribly wrong.
This club has a aircraft inside Chris.
The two aircraft continue to move closer to each other until they crash, and there was no response from the other side.
Annual evaluation of the pilot's ability to fly at night, the crew well aware of the route and the rules in this airspace. Now, while the military has not yet identified the crew, officials say one of the members was a woman. Army officials confirming they did have night vision goggles.